In this video, we're going to solve equations by factoring with grouping. It says use factoring by grouping to solve the following equation. We have four terms here, which sets us up perfectly for using factor by grouping. So these four terms are equal to 0. I'm going to start by taking the first two terms and factoring out something out of those two terms, and then I'll try to factor something out of these two terms, hoping to get the same factor left over. So I'm going to factor out x squared. All right, greatest common factor out of x cubed and x squared is x squared, so I end up with just x minus 1. When I factor x squared out of each, it's like dividing each of those. X cubed divided by x squared is x. X squared divided by x squared would be -1. And then I'm looking to get x minus 1 here, so I'm going to factor out a -9 out of these two, so -9. And when I divide out -9 here, I get just positive x. When I take out -9 here, I get -1 equals 0. So we know it's factorable because I end up with x minus 1 and x minus 1 for my two binomials, and they're the same, so that's why we know it's factorable. If they were different, then it would not be factorable. We'll factor the x minus 1 out. So we get x minus 1, and what's left is x squared minus 9. If I divide x minus 1 from this term, I get x squared. If I divide x minus 1 from this term, I get -9. That's equal to 0. So again, I have two binomials equal to 0, kind of like the previous video. One of these two has to be 0 if it's going to equal 0 when you multiply. So we're going to use the zero product property. So we have x minus 1 equals 0, or x squared minus 9 equals 0. Let's add 1 to the other side. We get x equal 1, or x squared is equal to 9. Nothing to do there. We got our solution, x equals 1, or let's square root each side. And when we do the square root of x squared, we get x is equal to square root of 9 is 3, so I get positive 3, or x is equal to -3. So I have x equal 1, or x equal 3, or x equal -3. Let's do a second example. Again, I'm going to start with the first two terms. And I'm going to factor something out of the first two terms. I'm going to factor x squared, the greatest common factor. And that leaves me with x minus 5 inside the parentheses when I divide x squared out of each term. And then I'm going to factor out a -4 here. So I get -4. When I divide -4x by -4, I get positive x. And 20 divided by -4 is -5. So because these two terms are the same, this factor by grouping is working. So I'm going to factor x minus 5 out of each term. When I divide that out, we'll bring it to the front, x minus 5. And dividing out of this term, we'll leave just x squared left. And dividing out of this term, we'll get the -4 left. Equals 0. Two binomials being multiplied equal to 0. So we're going to say that, I probably shouldn't put those there. We're going to say that zero product property. So x minus 5 has to either equal 0, or x squared minus 4 has to equal 0. Add the 5 over, x is equal to 5. Or add the 4 over, we get x squared is equal to 4. Then we can square root each side. And that leaves us with plus minus root 4. So we get x is equal to 2, or x is equal to -2, or, go back to this piece, x is equal to 5. So we get three possible solutions. Remember, this exponent, the highest exponent, is going to tell you the max number of solutions for your problem.